Hello, welcome to the Binge Thinker. My name is Jameel Raymond. It's an absolute pleasure to have you back for the second episode. Very excited to be here. Going to have a lot of fun talking about something that I'm quite passionate about, which is technology and the future of it. First of all, I just want to say a big thank you to all of the people that have listened to the first podcast and provided some amazing feedback. It really is heartwarming to be so well received. I'll be honest, and I said this probably in the first pod as well, it's certainly been pretty gut-wrenching to put myself all out there on the line, talk about things that I haven't before, but I think there is a significant amount of value for people to have these conversations and talk about themselves openly, own your story, and people resonate with it because we're all suffering. We're all suffering on our individual ways, and it's been absolutely amazing. The feedback that I've gotten, it's resonated with a lot of people, which just makes me feel great. It makes me feel really accepted, and I'm really glad that I can help create conversations for people in their own lives to think about the way that they treat themselves and the way they treat the others and the way they look after themselves during a really tough time during the pandemic. So again, thank you very much. I will be talking a bit more in depth about some various practices. I definitely want to have an ongoing dialogue about mental health practices, how they've helped me, how they can help you, and a few of the other bits and bobs that I've found that have just improved my life for the better. My tools are your tools, and it'll be very fun to explore them in the future. So thank you. So the episode today, we're going to talk about something that I like to call the technocracy. I'm a big lover of tech. I've been involved with computers and technology since I was 2 years old. I remember my dad buying our first tower PC in 1992. There's clips of me playing video games on it, things like Jaw of the Jungle and Duke Nukem 2 or even 1 maybe, 2D side scrollers and things like that. I spent a lot of my youth playing video games, being involved with tech, mostly just playing games to be honest, but always had an interest in the way that things worked. I used to build a couple of PCs. I used to be a real hands-on tinkerer, is what I like to say. Love playing with tech. As you can see, for the people on the video version, I'm in my own homemade studio, designed and put together by myself. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy the process. It really gets my monkey mind going. And professionally, I've been involved in tech for about 10 years too. So I used to work for a large tech organization in Australia. It'll probably come out at some point where I've worked. But part of my job was actually understanding technology, understanding the effects it has on an organization or a business and on a broad scale, a macro and a micro scale, how that can affect them from an economic and strategic standpoint. So, I think I've got a little bit of foresight and a positive foresight about where technology is taking us and what we can expect in the future that, could probably give us a bit more positivity about what's coming next. I think we've all, over the last 2 years, been pretty scared, pretty uncertain about what's going on. But personally, I am very excited for the future and what it's going to provide to us. I do believe that we are on the precipice of another golden age of technology. And yeah, let me talk you through it and let me tell you why I'm so happy about it. So the first thing I wanted to kick off with is this concept of the technocracy. This is not a term that I've coined, but it's certainly something that I believe in, and I think I've adapted it in my own language. Essentially, what I believe now is that we've got this technocracy, and that what that means to me is that the wealth of nations, the wealth of our future will not be decided by sound economic policy or the allocation of its current resources. It will be enabled by the future growth of technology and what it can enable in new capabilities, new functions, and new capabilities that probably weren't even imagined of or capable of in the past. There are some significant changes such as the fourth industrial revolution, Web3, the oncoming of automation, which some people freak out about with automation. yes, there is a definite risk to a lot of the working class and future generations of the working class economy. But if you're ahead of the curve, no pun intended, then there should be nothing to fear. I think you've got plenty of time to get in front of it. So with the technocracy, why I believe in it is because we have already gotten to this point where human capability has been superseded by technology. And that's been coming for the last couple of years and has been greatly accelerated by COVID. As someone that was selling technology to, organizations of, from small businesses to global multinational organizations for the last 5 to 10 years, they have been I've been at the forefront. I have seen what business leaders, for the majority of business leaders, have to question about technology over the last couple of years, and they've been doubtful. There's only been really a handful of organizations that have seen technology as an enabler, probably in the last 5-ish years. Previous to that, technology was usually lumped in as a cost and a keep the lights on perspective for a lot of businesses. Make sure the printer's got enough fucking paper in it. Make sure that everyone's emails work. Make sure people understand their passwords and those sorts of things. But people at the forefront, there's been the growth of chief information officers, chief technology officers. Now there's things like chief digital officers, which I think is probably a bit too far forward unless you are in something like social media and you have a really sound digital strategy. I think that's probably be a bit of a stretch at this point in time. The ubiquitousness of technology as an enabler is really starting to permeate, particularly now that we are essentially post-COVID. And why COVID has accepted the adoption of technology is essentially just necessity. We had to adapt because of the way that the pandemic kept us apart. And our decentralized workforces have been quite prevalent in the leading tech organizations for the last few years. I wouldn't say no more than 5. And how that's been enabled has been by the growth of cloud technology. So people who don't know about cloud technologies, you may have heard of things like AWS or Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure. If you are a real novice at technology, essentially what cloud computing is think of your old tower PC. It's got storage, it's got memory, it's got computing power. They are now, instead of being in your house, they are in giant warehouses that are highly concealed, and they are en masse and on scale. And these data centers and these cloud computing centers are essentially centralizing all of that compute and storage power away from organizations into safer, more efficient ways, more efficient places to send information through networks and the internet, essentially. So basically, every single application that you use on your phone is cloud. Your mailboxes are cloud. Hotmail was probably one of the first cloud services that you interacted with, as that was a cloud email service because the server was not hosted in your computer. It was hosted on Microsoft servers, God knows where. So cloud computing has been the underlying bedrock that has enabled the technology and application capability that has overlaid that. So from a functional perspective, that means things like collaboration, Zoom, for example. That's been a key factor in enabling this layer of accelerated adoption technology. Because technology, don't forget, is a tool. It's humanity's tool. So using these tools to our advantage, being able to adopt to them, being able to talk to them and master them is the key enabler from the human side of technology as opposed to the technology side. So keeping people connected through collaboration, through Zoom and Teams, has maintained a lot of operating capability throughout the lockdowns in particular. I mean, I was in face-to-face sales when the first year of the pandemic hit, and I did not do a single face-to-face meeting with my customers, but still made my number. Why? Because I was still effective by using Zoom and Teams to communicate with them. Because again, you're having that connection with them. It's about the people on the other side of the technology that makes it effective. Now, does it beat an analog conversation? Absolutely not. You got to build things with people face to face. But you make do, and because of the underlying convenience that it creates, it'll stick. It'll be around ongoing, if not forever. So collaboration has enabled, it's here to stay. That will underpin flexible working. Now, this is the big thing that will enable the future of decentralized technology and decentralized society, is the idea that our flexible working practices have been enabled now. So people have been able to work from home probably the last 5 to 7 years, depending if your organization has had that capability or not. But now it will be an absolute necessity to retain quality talent in any organization anywhere in the world. But what that does enable is the ability to attract talent anywhere in the world as well. And I'll talk about this more in a different episode about the Great Resignation and the Great Awakening / reset. But work-life balance and flexibility will be a key aspect for any quality employer to retain, because there's just been so much convenience added into the fold. Now, if you're someone that enjoyed working from home like I did, I fucking love working from home. I will never work in an office ever again if I can help it. It's still good to connect with people from time to time, but day to day, if I can be at home, I will be. I've got an office downstairs, and it's got everything I need. And I'm not a guy that will, just wake up at 8:59 to work at 9:01. I'm up at 6 a.m. or 5:30 most days to get through my day. But the idea of removing the commute, that's the big one. Removing the commute and getting so much time back in your day is immense. I mean, for the average person who commutes, half an hour to an hour per day, some people I know are commuting an hour each way just to get to an office to do work they can do from home. Think about how that has saved, money, emissions, if you are, so green-minded. But mostly it's about time, because we value time more than money. So thinking about all those hours you get back to, do something you like, spend more time with your family, pick up a new skill, pick up a hobby, or just not be in dead airspace. You go on a train, and you go on a train and everyone's disconnected. Headphones in, minds off. It's a train full of zombies because they are just going into standby mode until they can get home. So and I think we probably had enough dead air time during this pandemic, just zoning out to Netflix and all that sort of shit. So to step things forward, flexible working, enabled by technology, here to stay, and even at the decision level. Actually, the biggest influencer is at the decision-making level now, because workers have wanted this for ages, right? If you could not go into the office and not deal with whoever dipshit you have got in your cubicle, dealing with those fluoro lights and that shitty air conditioning, and having to spend $4 a day on coffee when you can just do it at home and not talk to any dipshit at work that you're dealing with, of course you're going to do that. But now at the executive level and the decision-making level, where people are comfortable, people aren't keeping them accountable about when and where they do their work because they're in charge. They're enjoying the benefits of flexible working, because now a lot of them are having tree changes and sea changes and are working from their holiday homes permanently. So a lot of execs and senior people in organizations who are finally having technology permeate their brains, besides the size 96 font on their iPhones that they've got day to day, they're starting to see the value of it. So that'll leak down, I wouldn't say intentfully, by the decision-making process, but if they're going to like it, they're going to hopefully pass that on to their lower employees. But the other benefit of that, of flexible working, is there is a significant saving to an organization that isn't really addressed. Because if you've got, 30 floors in the CBD, that shit's expensive. It's the rent, the power, all the utilities, your insurance, cleaning, maintenance, equipment. All of those are significant fixed costs in an organization. So you could have all of that, or you could just beef up a bunch of laptops, put them on a leasing plan so they become an operating cost, which is tax deductible, add a bunch of software into the devices themselves to make them secure and to collaborate with the team. That is way cheaper than paying thousands upon thousands of dollars in rent, utilities, insurance, all of those things. Now, most organizations are playing that off as the flexible working practice and going, oh, yay, we're enabling you. But do not be bullshitted by that at all. They are counting every cent. All of those operations teams and that accounting team and the bean counters and those people that work in that dark corner of the office that are leveraging every tax loophole to get ahead, they know what the value is. They know what the ROI is on this. And you getting a slightly shitty back because you haven't got the nicest chair or the nicest office chair in your home office is still way cheaper than them having to cover your CBD car spot for 12 months. That's what happened with me. I have a pretty good idea of how much money they saved from moving me to working from home. And yeah, sure, I like the benefit, but let's never pretend for a second that it's done in your best interest. It's done in theirs. But hey, take it. Why not? So what are the benefits around this? Again, flexibility for the common person, having more flexibility in the way that they operate their lives. There is going to be and we're probably seeing it now if you work in the white collar industries, this leaking of the balance between work time and home time. Because now that your laptop is just at your desk in your office at home, it's very easy to creep on, have a time creep until 7 p.m. doing emails or tasks or whatnot. But hey, you could log on at 10 a.m. the next day, just wave your mouse around a little bit to make sure you're still online on Zoom or Teams, and people aren't going to bother you. So again, that flexibility is there. It's up to you as the individual to provide that balance within your life and make it fit for you, right? Because sure, we've been working the 9 to 5 for the best part of 30, 40 years now, probably a bit longer, but you're not really getting 8 hours of productivity in a day. I would probably say I have 4 productive hours a day, and that would be a stretch. Maybe that's just me being a person that is highly capable but also highly lazy at the same time. But one of the great ways, this is more about a location thing. One of the great comments from Microsoft is work is what you do, not where you go, which is great for the flexible life aspect. But if the job's done, the job's done. And it's going to be a long time before organizations are going to try and push for getting less money out of you as an individual. There are some places that are doing 4-day work weeks. Maybe it's Iceland or something like that, but they're still paying you for 5 because they are not going to be able to leverage that against the workforce because it's so much easier now, and we're going to see this with the Great Resignation, to just leave a business. We're starting to see a big turn in perspective of power now going to the employees as opposed to the employers, particularly in industries that aren't leading and don't give you a lot of meaning in your life. So what does that mean? It means that now employees have more choice than they ever have, because with the Great Resignation, and I'll talk about this in a later ep, people are searching for more meaningful work. And if you are just sitting in your 9 to 5, barely doing what you want to do for an organization you give zero shits about, there are plenty more ways to make a living, or at least make a living in a way that's more suitable to you and how you want to operate. And that's what technology is going to enable. But we'll speak about that a bit further on. How else is this going to benefit people? It's going to decentralize the city. It's going to decentralize the CBD. Which, again, the tree change and the sea changes have occurred. And we've seen that with the increase in rural house prices recently. Places like Geelong, Benalla, even places like Mildura, Wangaratta, a lot of their house prices have increased in value because, again, executives or people that want that tree change, they can work from there. That's what the technology has enabled. So that'll mean, hopefully, God knows at the moment it's not working, there'll be less traffic on the roads, less pollution in the area, and then hopefully some of this land can be repurposed for public use, parks, multifunctional spaces. That's the dream, ideally. But that remains to be seen, and that's about the bureaucracy taking control there. So that's how big tech has accelerated things, right? And what else is coming in the future? So one of the big things that I am pretty excited about is the emergence of Web3. Now, I'm still very new to this, but what I've found from the various sources that I've seen is really, really exciting for people in creative industries and something that I want to really lean into over the next couple of years. So Web3 is essentially Web 3.0. So we're going through the third generation of the evolution of the internet and what has provided to us. So Web 1.0 was, dial-up internet, publishing information onto the internet with minimal interactivity, right? You had your website and it was just publishing information you put up there. It wasn't really speaking to any other information sources. Hyperlinks were very scarce. Things like message boards were the only way you could really communicate between people. And that was fine for a bit. That was, the end of that era was the .com boom and crash. The .com boom and crash brought Web 2.0. And that is what we are currently experiencing now with the centralization of technology, internet resources and capability underpinned and centralized by big tech companies. So the big five, for example, which is Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and I think Meta is part of that now with their combined wealth and combined influence on the culture. So what Web 2.0 is the platform economy. So that's the places like your social media giants, your technology giants, where the ubiquitousness of technology and its utilization in common society is ever prevalent. You cannot exist as a business without a website or some sort of e-commerce. Gone are the days where you could go a whole day without looking at your phone and not looking at social media. So then the ability to communicate and publish information and share it across platforms as well. So those are the hallmarks of Web 2.0. So what Web 3.0 is actually the counterculture to 2.0, which is the decentralization of the internet, of the commerce structures, and the new establishment of certain new technologies and platforms that distribute the capabilities, resources, and outcomes to the people that create it. Because right now, it's a very one-sided conversation when it comes to publishing information on the internet. You need social media to have a presence. You need their platform to create and amplify your voice. But what that does is we see this poor moderation of power and content by these tech giants because they don't have the skills and capability. And plus, there's a big moral dilemma about the boundaries of censorship. And one of the things I have to say about the problem when it comes to censorship on social media is that we keep pushing the problem onto the social media giants to moderate us. And the us is us as a collective. Why should if you should be looking at why are the people that are making these comments existing and making those comments in the first place? Like, we are our own problem here. When we do this as a societal collective by blaming, Facebook for misinformation and for silencing and moderating certain voices, that might be extreme or incorrect. Sure, if they are deliberately false and are things like bots, yeah, sure, get rid of them. But we should be addressing the conversation as to why they feel compelled to post these things, to talk about these things in the first place. And by putting that blame onto an external party, that negates that opportunity to have a discussion and a conversation about the differences in our perspective, and really not taking any responsibility for the way that we communicate with others and hope to be communicated with in the public domain. So, and I think that's actually going to be a problem in the future as well. And that's probably one of the reasons why Web3 has a significant amount of decentralization focused on it, is because we, I think as a people in the collective, are getting quite tired of just listening or having to be subject to other people's idiocy, right? And we perceive it to be idiocy because it just grates on our nerves for whatever reason. And a lot of it is drivel. A lot of it is reactionary drivel, has not been thought of, and are people's emotions as opposed to people's salient, thought out points. And I'm frustrated by it too. You know, I barely read a comment section unless I really want to punish myself on any social media platform. I don't watch the mainstream news. I don't even have free-to-air plugged in on my TV. Now, that there's risks to that, right? That means that, am I at risk of being at my own echo chamber? Yeah, possibly. But I think personally, I'm quite good at using my own discernment. And that's what I think this is lacking at the moment when we talk about the media in general, is that we're taken advantage of and perceived as dummies, that we can't make up our own opinions into what we think is right and what is not. Can we be misled? Yes, absolutely. But that's the compounding nature of society. It just seems for some weird reason, the more that we collate as a group, the dumber we get as a collective. I can't explain why. It just seems to happen time and time again. Maybe it's some deeply ingrained social thing in our monkey and lizard brains that we cannot seem to get over, but it's there. So this decentralization, what it will do, how will we create decentralization is a better question. So technology is enabling creativity at scale like it never has before, particularly with the growth of the mass production of simpler technologies to produce content. Now, content is the future. Being able to articulate and express ourselves over multiple mediums is going to be the future of media. That's why I'm doing this podcast. That's why I'm creating a comedy network, right? Is because the future is going to be placed in the hands of the creators. And that's been decentralized from the traditional media streams, such as mainstream media, 7, 9, 10, whatever you want to call it. Because they initially had the technological advantage to broadcast media at scale. That's what TV was. That's what radio was. You know, you had your Channel 31s and your ham radio enthusiasts, but that doesn't achieve scale because most of the people that are doing that stuff aren't necessarily entertaining or have the resources to be entertaining. But now, thanks to the rapid acceleration of technology to enable creativity, such as, for example, the podcast system that I'm using, the smartphone that I'm using to shoot this podcast on video, and the scale capability that social media and our platform economies have, that's why people like Joe Rogan are popular. That's why podcasts are blowing up, because the creativity has been put in our hands and the scale of our thoughts has been expanded like it never has been before. And that's scary but fun. But that is the precipice of any new innovation, all right? And why that excites me is because it's going to open up the creator economy. And the creator economy is something that I'm leaning quite heavily into, and is the basis of why I'm doing this, is that the future belongs to creators. The future belongs to people that can create value in their own hands. And why is that? Because the underlying systems and the subliminal systems, things like value, convenience, the subliminal value systems that underpin everything that we do day to day are becoming more prevalent. And for example, automation will take away non-value adding processes from the economy. Anything that is repeatable will be replaced with some sort of script that runs a machine or a robot. Elon Musk said, all human input is error. And I tend to agree with that. Because again, we reach that tipping point where anything that is simple and repeatable and that can be learned by an algorithm or be adapted to by AI will happen. Because the people that implement these technologies are not necessarily looking at the risk, they're looking at the cost. How much does a script cost to run and maintain versus an employee? It would be 100 to 200 to 1. And then you also mitigate the risk factors that can happen from human error. Why do you think we're investing into self-driving cars? It's not just to save the 600 or so lives in Australia or whatever they are worldwide. There is a significant cost saving to be had, particularly in logistics, if you have self-driving trucks. Because you take away all the margin for error and you take away the significant cost in maintaining an employee in that role. It's sad, but that's what happens when you have significant generational changes in technology and what it enables. There's going to be a lot of out with the old, but there's also going to be a significant adding of the new. So where was I going with the creator economy? So yeah, why is this exciting to me? It's the power's in our hands. I've said that already. But things like NFTs, for example, are going to significantly empower creators and give them wealth and resource and return on their investment for the value they create. Because, for example, NFTs are essentially easily distributable membership cards or GoFundMes in really, really simple terms, right? If you're a creator, for example, and you want to create a new project, you can go out to your fan base and go, hey guys, if you want to be part of this special project, get close to me, do something that's really close to my heart and soul, and it's something that you really align to. I'm going to create this project. I'm going to release 100 tokens. If you want to be part of it, X token costs $5,000 each, but as a result, you get these special benefits, and you get a little badge of honor for whatever it signifies. There it is. In your life that, hey, maybe, you're a really big Anderson .Paak fan. Or, for example, I know that Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher are already utilizing NFTs to basically create your own story when it comes to content. So what they do is they have their own production company, and they have created a Family Guy-esque sort of cartoon that's heavily R-rated, full of adult content, but it's all produced in-house, and the production is paid for by a small collective of super fans, so to speak, who have paid for the production via NFTs. And what they can do now is they can actually choose the outcome and vote on the outcome of the cartoon and the storyline by utilizing their tokens to vote. So that, again, decentralizes the power structure of how something can be created, and also creates a lot of influence by the people that have invested into it. So in simpler terms, it's like shareholders, but for more creative outcomes. Because if you're a shareholder in a big organization and you've got, 1,000 shares versus they've got 100 million out there, you can't really say much. You don't really do much. I mean, AGMs for shareholder meetings are fucking useless. They're just there because they're mandatory at this point. But again, it enables hyper-personalization and integration with individuals, brands, creators that you really align with as a consumer. I actually hate the word consumer. I really should stop saying it. But what that means for the creators is that there is a significant return on investment, because you can enable the creation of projects of collaboration a lot quicker. You do not have to rely on traditional mediums such as record companies and production houses to get your word out there. Most of the people that I am involved with in creative industries, particularly in comedy right now, are trying to create their own name through generating content on social media. And yes, it's a slog, but that's the primordial perspective of what's going to happen in the future when it comes to this decentralized creator economy. And that's why I say, yes, it's a shit time to be in the creative arts, particularly when you're looking at this Hillsong bullshit. Oh my God. Like, as a bit of a side note, what the fuck is ScoMo thinking? Like, do you just want to destroy the arts vote and the creative vote for the next generation of the Liberal Party? Because you have. The fact that you would allow a church to fucking put on a fucking third grade doof or party or music festival, whilst for the last 2 years the creative industries have absolutely taken a beating. So many creative arts venues have fallen over thanks to COVID, and people are sitting at home sick, just feeling like absolute dog shit because they haven't been able to do the things they love. And then you allow this horseshit to happen less than 2 weeks whilst the majority of music festivals have been cancelled. Like, whoa. It just saddens me that we have gotten to this point where it is like Footloose, isn't it? Someone made a joke about that. Is that what like dancing is illegal, having fun is illegal now, unless you have church or Pentecostal ties? It's ridiculous. Honestly, it just makes me think: does the Liberal Party, have they just canned the arts vote? I mean, they probably should have, realistically, and for a time now. But it's not just people that are in the creative industries. Any millennial or any Gen Z that has seen the mishandling of this pandemic and any of the topics and parts of the culture that affect them, the complete mishandling of that, they're going to be absolutely furious. And that's, I want to say that it will show itself in the next election. But if the last election was anything to go by, I just don't know. I really just don't know. Demographically, millennials and Gen Z are the next major generation, the next silent majority, so to speak. Or the next boomers is probably the best way to put it, because of the amount of youth that fit in that demographic. And it just makes me wonder, like, how does a conservative vote or any conservative faction ever intend to retain its legitimacy over the next 10 to 15 years? That's the question, but, the votes speak for themselves. I mean, Scott Morrison was voted into power instead of just being the fucking meat shield that Turnbull put up against. It was, if you know the story, Scott Morrison was basically only in power during the Lib spill because Turnbull put him up there instead of letting Dutton win, because he is literal Lord Voldemort. So, yeah, it's a bit of a shame, the sad state of politics and the absolute lack of leadership that we see. But hey, I'm positive about the future. Who knows who's coming to save us from the political spectrum? Who knows? So yeah, I got a bit sidetracked on the creator stuff, but I'm going to talk about the creator economy in more detail in a later podcast when I talk about Aussie Comedy Network and the vision I have for that. But again, very exciting stuff for creators and the underlying technologies that will enable creativity and put resources and capabilities back into creators' hands. It's exciting stuff. Something to look forward to if you're in the creative industries. It might suck now, guys. I know we're in the dark of it now, but great things are coming. From a more technological perspective, there's another thing, or probably a more mechanical perspective, I guess you would call it. There is also this, there's two major trends that are coming through. One is the fourth industrial revolution, and then there is also the green tech movement. So with the fourth industrial revolution, that will be primarily driven by IoT, or the Internet of Things. So if you've never heard of IoT, it's basically what the internet, the Internet of Things. So things being machine-to-machine communication, as opposed to machine-to-human communication or human-to-human communication that has been the internet. So what does that mean? Essentially, older technology networks such as 3G and 2G back in the day, your CDMA days when you had your Nokia 3310, those networks have been repurposed into private underlying networks for machines to communicate to one another over very large distances. So 3G and 2G networks operated on lower frequencies. And what does a lower frequency do? Lower frequencies, when it comes to radio and these sorts of things, I don't want to get too technical here, is that a lower frequency permeates a further distance. So you can have a 2G signal way out in the middle of whoop whoop. That's so a lower frequency permeates the landscape, but it also transmits a lot less information than your more recent frequencies. So for example, 4G and 5G are high frequency spectrums. It's not the spectrum. They're high frequency signals, whatever that is. I've lost my brain at the moment. But so they operate at a higher frequency, and then they communicate more information, i.e. there's more bandwidth. That's why you can stream on them. But they cannot penetrate thick surfaces, so physical things get in the way of 4G and 5G. That's why if you go into a car park, for example, and you go to or a basement, you might not get as much coverage because the radio frequencies that are higher spectrum cannot penetrate things like steel, rock, anything that's really dense. But IoT frequencies, such as 2G and older 3G frequencies, they can permeate long distances and through things like denser items. So what does that mean for a practical application? The primary benefit is that you're able to automate and industrialize and add technology elements to primary industry. Primary and rural industry, predominantly. So things like agri-tech or mining tech. For example, you're able to communicate with devices that are a long, long way away, getting insights and information that you would have gotten from that distant environment that you wouldn't have been able to get before, or you would have to send a person out to do it. And how that works is that with IoT, the big thing is the network, and then it's also the devices. So these new devices can basically sense whatever you want. It can be temperature, that's pretty straightforward, humidity, anything that related to anything really. So for example, let's use agri-tech as an example. If you wanted to check what your pH levels were in the soil, how much water is in the soil, has it got too many particular nutrients? Is there exposure to pollutants? And you are able to put at scale all of these sensors onto these devices and log that information back, and take that data and get new amounts of insights and data that you would have never gotten before to allow you to make more informed decisions or minimize costs from minimize wastage, for example. A great example is a product that I helped launch, which was an IoT water metering system for the water industry, essentially. So basically, in the future, and it's already happening in small areas now, instead of the water meter reader dude coming down, checking how many megaliters you've consumed or whatever it is in your month, just put an IoT sensor on there, and it'll read the clicks, knows how much water you've used in that month, and then boom, it saves that process, that manual process of someone having to come out and do that, saves costs, creates more efficiencies. If you need to know the amount of water flow or the amount of pressure that's going through certain pipes, or maybe there's a leakage in the water network and you're unaware of it because you can't sense it, you don't have anything that's out there, and some of these pipes are, decades old, falling apart, or, a kangaroo's gotten in the way or something's happened, you are able to get sensory information on where that impact is, minimizes your time and cost to serve to repair that, and then also significantly reduces things like non-revenue water. So what I mean by non-revenue water is if there's a massive leakage, all right, you've saved a lot of water, but as an organization, you've saved a lot of money from not having that water out there because you usually sell that for whatever cents per litre it is. So these sorts of things that's what they talk about, the fourth industrial revolution. That's what they are going to change, is that the fourth industrial revolution will modernize old school and primary industries, things that are still relying on people and manual labor to get done. So for another example is that, the majority of large trucks at mining camps now and mines are self-driving. And how do they do that? They have a bunch of sensors on these massive trucks. They also have their own private networks that are able just to be localized within a mine site. So that what that does is creates a geofence of control. And then using the sensory data that's very low latency, so they're able to pick up any changes in the environment very quickly, they are able to make decisions to govern where the truck goes at once. So again, minimizing human error, minimizing human input, a lot cheaper to maintain, and just, again, a significant efficiency creator in the market. So that's the technology, and that's what it's going to do for the primary industries. There's going to be tons of use cases. So if you are in a primary industry, or you're in a more trade-based industry, there's nothing to fear unless you're in a job that is being replaced by that. And the best way to counter that, if you are in that situation, is to just embrace it, honestly, is to just embrace the technology. Learn how to use it, learn how to master it, be the controller of it as opposed to it controlling you and taking control of your life. Because one of the major skills that is going to be required in the future is the mastery of technology, understanding how it creates value in your ecosystem and being able to deliver on it, right? People are still an integral part of technology because, again, like I said before, it is a tool of the people. So what do you need to do? Become a better person. Become a better person with technology. So if you are able to utilize these services and these technologies to enable whatever you're doing, add to it. Maybe you are the manager of people as opposed to technology. Developing people skills is going to be especially crucial, because if this is for the people, what do you then need to manage? Not the technology. It can manage itself. You've got to manage the people. You've got to become more human, a better human. So developing soft skills, creative skills, negotiation, emotional intelligence, leadership. These are the things that are still highly valued. And as we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years when it comes to society, are still in, very short supply and high demand. We are still missing empathetic, emotionally intelligent leaders in every aspect of society. So if you can get there, there is plenty of money to be made, and you are in a very safe position, my friends. I think the last thing I wanted to talk about was green tech. Now, I'm sort of new to this as well, but from what I can see, I read a lot of sources based on venture capital. Because I've been creating this, I've been slow creating my own business and understanding the process, because people start talking to me about, hey, are you going to get angel investing? Are you going to get into that sort of stuff and have people buy into your organization? And the answer is no. I do not want to share equity in what I'm creating with other people. Not because, well, why? The main thing is I don't want to give people that do not care about what I'm doing as much as me decision-making power, because what I'm doing is not about money. And it's about power. And that sounds weird and probably sounds a bit sus, but how do I put this? Yeah, there's a power element. I won't deny it. But it's more about having the capability to oversee whatever I'm doing and have control in a vision that I see. You can come along for the ride, but you cannot necessarily be, in the driver's seat with me. That's getting a bit megalomaniac, but let's divulge from that. Or divert. But yeah, so a lot of organizations, a lot of venture capital firms are investing into green tech. There was this great quote in the 5 Bullet Friday email that Tim Ferriss sent out from a guy. I don't know if I can find it, but basically one of the leading venture capital firms is saying that the next 1,000 unicorns, and that is organizations that are valued in the market or enter the market at a valuation of $1 billion or more, are going to come from green tech organizations. And those are things like, green concrete, green water, so being able to purify or desalinate water, being able to somehow restock our oceans in some way or form. We're going to get to a point, unfortunately, where our current systems and processes and mechanisms are not going to be able to support the wind back of industrial impact we've had over the last X amount of years. And then by necessity, the private market will have to provide these solutions through the emergence of new technologies and then leveraging them in the market to create outcomes at scale, as we do with all technologies nowadays. I mean, you would love to think that we won't have to get to a point. Well, no matter what, the private market is going to have to get involved in reversing climate change and our industrial impact, because the government's too slow and is corrupt and all that sort of stuff. But that it creates two streams of thought for me. Number one is, where is this additional money going to come from? Is it going to come from the taxpayer? Because we're going to have to pay for all these things. How do we generate that new value in the market? There's probably an answer to that I haven't really thought about effectively yet, because it's the same as Tesla, right? Tesla's shot up in price, not necessarily from what they can do as a company, but what they represent. They represent value more than they represent output. And that value isn't necessarily financial. It is the fact that they are accelerating the demands of the public at large. Elon said that one of his roles in Tesla is not necessarily to create better cars, but to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles in the industry, because if left to their own devices, they won't do it. Like the seatbelt, they fought the seatbelt. Ford, Toyota, probably not Toyota, but primarily Ford and all these American car manufacturers resisted putting seatbelts into their cars for like 20 years until the government had to intervene because so many people had died. Now, if you don't even want to keep your target market safe because it's inconvenient to your process and your bottom line, then why would we believe that they're going to do anything of any significance in the future? But somehow we get fooled into thinking that the corporate market and the private market works in our interest. It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. And we're seeing that crumble away now more than ever. But somehow we just get conned into it or have short memories, or maybe it's just something that we're used to as a society, is that they will let us down over and over again. Who knows? But with the emergence of green tech, there's going to be this Superman-esque hero saves the day industry that explodes over the next 30 years. I'm looking forward to it. But what does that say for how much they have to clean up before they get there? That's going to be the interesting point, is how much demand is going to be created from the destruction of our natural resources and our natural environments to be cleaned up and synthesized by alternative technologies, and we have to pay the price. Who knows? That's a bit dystopian, but it's a future that we may have to face into, really. I think we all saw that coming, let's be honest. But yeah, with this green wave, yeah, if it's 1,000 companies at $1 billion, that's $1 trillion. I mean, it doesn't sound ridiculous that $1 trillion worth of value can be created in the market to help save our planet. I mean, the US has printed something in the manner of a couple of trillion over the last 2 years to keep their economy afloat. So why couldn't it happen again from a global perspective to make sure that we all survive as a species? So yeah, maybe there is some positivity in there. I think that's a bit about it, guys. I think I've covered everything I wanted to knock off for today. Thank you for paying attention to that. I think I got a bit rambly there. I think I got a few tangents, but hey, get used to it, right? Get used to it. That's the way I talk, baby. It is what it is. But thank you again so much. If you found this interesting, or you have, your own inputs, got any feedback on the podcast, things I can improve, things you want to talk about that you thought were interesting from the pod and want to expand on, please reach out to me anytime. Love a conversation about anything that I'm putting up here. You can reach me at @jraymond on Instagram, or email me at j@jameelraymond.com. This podcast is produced by Aussie Comedy Network, as you can see up there if you are on YouTube, at Aussie Comedy Network on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. When this comes out, I'm going to formally launch Aussie Comedy Network at the end of February, which is extremely exciting. I'm going to release a podcast in a couple of weeks talking about what my vision for Aussie Comedy Network is, what it's about, and where I think it's going to take the industry at large. I think it's going to be disruptive. It's going to be really interesting. It factors in a lot of the things that we've talked about that are coming next in technology. And I'm going to incorporate that where I can for the benefit of the network and the people that are involved in it. So watch this space. Besides that, hey, if you like the podcast, please tell your friends, share it around, get the word out, rate it on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you rate things, really. If it's on Yelp, sure, why not? It's a delicious pod. The Binge Thinker pod on Instagram. You want to see more clips? I am going to start a TikTok. I have to pull my 31-year-old ass out of the fucking grave to start a TikTok. The TikTok will be used to promote this podcast to the kiddies, to the Gen Zers that might find this interesting and want to hear the tales of a weathered old man like myself. So keep an eye out for that. It will be the Binge Thinker, not pod, just the Binge Thinker on TikTok. So I'll put that out in the weeks to come. Besides that, again, thank you very much. I've been Jameel Raymond, and I will talk to you next week. Ciao.